I'd make it so quick that I'm going to make them feel doubt that they're going to be able to beat me in that moment in time. And that's probably one of the best tips I can give anyone who's trying to buy at auction. Well, I often get asked about how should I bid or how should I approach an auction when it comes to bidding, because for most people, I guess bidding at an auction could be, and usually is, their first interaction, first time bidding. It's scary, it's intimidating. And I think a lot of people who miss out on auctions over time, they change their strategy because they're missing out. And so I think a lot of people want to understand or learn, how should I approach that day and how should I bid at auction? One of the first steps is understanding who you're competing against. As an auctioneer, my job is also to read the crowd, to read the bidders, to look at body language and understand, the people that are bidding, their age groups, their motivation, their way of bidding, to watch the chatter between them so I can understand what they potentially could or couldn't do in an auction scenario. And I think that's a good first tip for people is to go, well, who is my competition and how am I going to tackle that? We have auctions sometimes where you might have that really loud, almost obnoxious bidder who's aggressive and can intimidate bidders. And people ask me, well, how do I tackle that? And I think one of the tips is really deciding on what bidder do you want to be? Do you want to be aggressive and strong with your bids? Or do you want to be passive and quiet and try to come in at the end there and steal the show? And deciding what's going to work best for you. I mean, there's no perfect answer, but I think there's tips around each of those strategies that are going to make sense. For instance, if you're in an auction scenario and one of your competing bidders or against you are bidding loud and strong, big aggressive bids, there's no better way to tackle that than also mimicking that same behavior. I had an auction recently where I had a gentleman who's a buyer's advocate who bid loud, strong. It was almost theatrical. But equally, a lady across from her competed in exactly the same way. She yelled out her bid nice and strong and loud, also in the same sort of tone as he did. It made for great theatre, but it also showed him that he might be in for a fight and that his strategy might be questioned by someone else in the crowd. So I think there's no fear, and you shouldn't have any fear in also being just as strong and loud with your own bid if you come across that from a competing bidder. I think before anything, you've really got to know your budget. The hype and emotion of auction obviously can get you a little bit carried away, and that's what it's designed to do. Understanding that is key, but knowing your budget is important. Knowing your budget, your pre-approval limit, is going to set you a plan around where you'd like to start and where you can finish. Because ultimately, you can't and shouldn't go above your budget that you're pre-approved for, or you might find yourself in a bit of trouble. So ultimately, you're going to need to know, where is my budget, literally, so that you know your definite limit. You and your partner know and understand you cannot go beyond that point. And that's the first thing that's going to protect you from any issue when it comes to bidding at auction. Taking emotion out of your bidding is something that is hard to do, because if it's a home that you've fallen in love with, it's the dream home, it's the one you guys have to have, it can be hard. So sometimes taking emotion out might mean removing yourself from that bidding experience. Maybe it's having a friend do it who's had some experience, maybe it's hiring an advocate, or maybe relying on a real estate agent that you've got a relationship with to be there to bid on your behalf. If you do that, you can take emotion away from that experience, and it might be better for you. The auctioneer then can't read your own emotion in that moment. The agents can't play on that emotion as well. And it's not as painful for you in that loss to have everyone looking at you if you do miss out and if you're being outbid. So maybe finding a friend with that experience is the right answer for you when it comes to bidding at auction. Going back to kind of scanning the crowd and understanding who you're up against is so important. When you get good at that, you can almost pick who will be bidding and to what level and to what strength, and almost start to understand how I would challenge that person as they bid. If they're younger perhaps and a little bit intimidated by the process and new to bidding, that might be your opportunity to be a little bit more aggressive with your bids. Perhaps you're going to bid in increments higher than whatever they bid. Perhaps your bidding is going to be fast and furious when it comes to their bid, so that your bid is lined up and ready. So you hear them throw out or call out a $5,000 or a $2,000 bid, you might come over the top with a $10,000 bid really quickly, really strong, with clear body presence to the auctioneer and to the crowd that you're there to buy the property. That style of bidding might intimidate that particular person, and that might be giving you a subtle advantage when it comes to bidding at auction. Ultimately, your choice about whether you're aggressive or quite calm and passive with your bidding is a choice that you'll have to make. Those that are passive and calm often like to wait for their moment. They like to wait to hear the property go on the market first. They like to wait towards the end before they jump in and calmly kind of position themselves right at the end of the auction, which is a strategy that can work because sometimes people are exhausted from competing against one person. Then right at the end, someone jumps in with a bid above them and they look around and realize now I've got to compete with this other person. So that is a good strategy, and I've seen that work many times for people as well. Versus being the person that was aggressive early on and bid strong early on. Again, no two ways are going to ensure success at auction because ultimately we don't know what the other bidders or buyers would go to in that kind of environment. But I think making a choice about how you're going to approach it and sticking to that choice, is the right plan. So I think whether you're going to go hard early to intimidate or whether you're going to wait till you think everyone's exhausted to jump in or within your budget and limit, those are the two clear choices that you have when you run into bidding at auction. A lot of people ask, should I be bidding before it goes on the market? On the market's the point where the reserve's been met and the auctioneer calls out on the market. And people sort of think, well, I should just wait till that moment arrives before I place my bids. A couple of things. That moment might arrive and leave you with very little room to bid. And that moment might arrive where there's already 2 or 3 bidders really going at it and you feel like, I don't even know if I can get my bid in here. I think it boils down to this, is that buyers that have been more successful at auctions, that have ended up with the keys in their hands, in my experience, I've seen them bid before the word's on the market, before it's hit the reserve. I think if you set an intention to your competitors in auction that you're there to buy it before it hits the reserve price, before it's announced on the market, I've seen more people buy property who have been in that position rather than those that have come in after the word's on the market. Again, it's all personal choice, but I think that on percentage chance of winning an auction, from what I've seen over 15 years, setting an intention early, those buyers have been more successful. So I'd advise heading down that track. Once it goes on the market, once that reserve's been met, once there's that excitement that now you might possibly buy the property, is probably when the emotion is most heightened. It's at that moment in time my advice really leans towards watching what your competitors are doing, as in what increments are they bidding in, how fast are they bidding, because it becomes a game of poker. If they're bidding in $1,000 lots, that's your time and your chance when it's on the market to throw in a $5,000 bid over the top, nice, strong, aggressive, confident body manner. That is your best chance to play that game when it goes on the market. Now, yes, they might counter and they might match your 5, or they might match it with a 10 and go above you. And just like poker, when someone bets above you, you've got to stay strong and resilient. And if it's within your budget, match them again or be the aggressor and go higher. But don't be intimidated if they match your own strategy, is my advice in those crucial moments when it goes on the market. Certainly when it goes on the market, my advice is to bid and bid strong. That's when you've got to play your biggest hand when it comes to buying the property. But I think if I were buying at auction, I would normally try to be a little bit more aggressive, particularly at that moment in time, with the increments that I bid and the speed at which I bid. Literally the moment that they bid, that bid leaves their mouth, I would be over the top with a $5,000 bid if it's a higher bid than what they bid. I'd be over the top straight away. I'd make it so quick that I'm going to make them feel doubt that they're going to be able to beat me in that moment in time. And that's probably one of the best tips I can give anyone who's trying to buy at auction.